everybody to the Carson City Board of Equalization. It's February 24th, beautiful windy day. It's 9:11 a.m. I'd like to go to item agenda 1, call to order and determination of quorum.
Chair Block,
Here.
Member Bureau, Member Leonard Ray, Member Lapire, Member Sonata. A quorum is present.
Great, thank you for that. Number 2 is swearing in witnesses and staff.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, this is Mihaela Niagos, Deputy District Attorney. Will all witnesses that will testify today stand and raise their right hand? Do each of you swear or affirm the testimony you will give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury? For the record, I note that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you.
Okay, we're on to item number 3, public comment. The public is invited at this time to provide comment on any topic that relates to a matter over which this public body has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power, including any such matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised during this period for public comment. Do we have any public comment? If you'd like, if you could come and sit up at the chair, hit the button and state your name for the record.
Flag button.
Change the sign.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Good. My name is Patricia Cook. Good morning. I am Patricia Cook, and together with John Benkert, we own the property at 1654 Wellington West. We are here to share our experience as Wellington Crescent property owners in support of Mr. Chang's appeal.
Second. Do we need to, is this public comment or do we need to go to the action item first?
It is, she can present public comment on a matter that is on the agenda or within your jurisdiction.
Okay.
Okay. Wellington Crescent is a small and distinct subdivision with approximately 56 parcels. The subdivision is largely developed with only 2 vacant lots remaining, one of which sold for $475,000, and the other is a raw 1-acre parcel that remains undeveloped. There are no future phases planned and no pipelines of new lots entering the market. Because of this limited inventory, the number of transactions in Wellington Crescent is very low compared to other West Side neighborhoods. Vacant land rarely comes on the market, and improved properties also have long holding periods, often remaining unsold for years. Unlike other West Side subdivisions, Wellington Crescent is a private property owners association. All property owners pay an annual POA fee of approximately $1,100, which funds road maintenance and resurfacing, street lighting, street signage and traffic control, snow removal service. These costs are mandatory and ongoing, and they are in addition to the property taxes we pay. While areas such as Plantation Drive or Cogorno Way receive county services for things like road repair and general maintenance, Wellington Crescent owners pay directly for all of these infrastructure services themselves. Because of the small size of the subdivision, the limited number of sales, and the POA obligations, Wellington Crescent behaves like its own small market rather than as a part of the broader West Side market. 1 or 2 vacant land sales, particularly when using a single high-price sale like $475,000, cannot reliably represent the true value of all lots. We respectfully submit that these unique characteristics, private infrastructure costs, limited inventory, and low turnover should be considered in the evaluation of land values for Wellington Crescent. Without proper adjustment, the 47% increase applied to our subdivision does not reflect actual market conditions or economic realities. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more public comment at this point in time? Come on up and state your name for the record.
Okay, my name is Patty Winningham. I'm located at 2653 Wellington South. I'd like to add to the previous comment that, yes, our property tax went up 47, our value of our land went up 47.29%, but the structure on the assessed statement went down, which does not make sense because we built a very large RV garage in '24. So why does the land value go up 47%, yet the structure went down? It absolutely makes no sense. I'd like this to be reconsidered in how the numbers are calculated. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Sir, would you like to come on up?
Still alive? Okay. What they said. My name is Norman Brown. My wife Susan and I own the property at 2778 Wellington South in the Wellington Crescent development. And I retired some time ago from high tech. And one of the things I learned was that my bosses did not like surprises. And I've come to understand that. When I got my new property assessment, I thought that this adjustment, 47%, seemed high, but we just bought the property in 23-24, and I thought that it was a result of the change in price. But the property had been on the market for some time and sold for below asking price. It just didn't seem to substantiate that kind of an increase, but I'd missed the appeal period, so that just had to be something I guess I thought I'd have to accept, except I have this opportunity here to address you. But like other people, I can't understand the rationale for such a large increase because we do not draw on the same amount of city services that other developments do, other city properties require, especially this last week. I'm sure we paid a lot for snow removal that the city didn't have to do. And I just wanted to say that this was a surprise. And as a retired person on a fixed income, we don't like surprises that impact us. And I would just ask the board that they take this into consideration and please no more surprises.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more public comment? Come on up, sir. State your name for the record and
My name's, hit this black button. Am I live now? Okay. So my name is Michael Fry. I live at 2733 Wellington South. And the first question I have is why did that 47% come up? What's the reason for that? And two is, like that other gentleman was talking about, we're on fixed incomes for, a lot of us are because we're retired. And when you generate some kind of a issue like that, how, in God's name, are you expected to have everyone cover these kinds of costs when you have these kind of, when you implement something like this? So I guess my question is, what was the rationale for the 47%? And then where does that 3% hike ever apply that we were supposed to adhere to, that I thought? So those are the questions.
anybody else from the public? Just come on up.
Mr. Chair, before we continue with public comment, can you ensure that everyone signs in to the public comment sheet?
Chair, members, and members of the board. My name is Catherine Flynn. My husband, Darren Flynn, and my 5 children live at 2777 Wellington South in Carson City, assessor's parcel number 007-37105, located within Wellington Crescent subdivision. We are here to respectfully contest the 47% increase in our 2026 to 27 land assessment, which appears to have been uniformly applied across all parcels within the Wellington Crescent community. Under NRS 361.227, taxable value must reflect the full cash value of the property, considering current market conditions. As of the lien date, in this case, July 1st, 2025. NAC 361.118 also requires that land value values be supported by comparable arm's length sales data and not by general indexing alone. In our case, we can speak from personal experience about these market conditions. Throughout most of calendar year 2025, we made multiple good faith efforts to sell our home. It was listed twice on the MLS, but had to be withdrawn both times due to lack of buyer activity and insufficient offers relative to the list price. Despite professional marketing efforts and pricing aligned with nearby comparable properties, the home simply did not sell, underscoring that actual market demand and value in the area did not justify any large increase in underlying land value. The pattern in our neighborhood supports this experience. Based on Carson City assessment data and MLS records, there were no vacant land sales in Wellington Crescent and no material increase in land to total value ratios across similar West Side subdivisions. Applying a 47% uniform land adjustment lacks support under NAC 361.1365 and NAC 361.137, which require that that cost or land factor revisions be backed by objective, verifiable market analysis filed in the assessor's reappraisal documentation. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. By contrast, the data we've reviewed indicates that market appreciation during 2024 to 25 was closer to 5 to 10%, consistent with broader citywide residential trends. Thus, the current assessment's underlying land factor, applied without individualized valuation evidence, appears excessive and inconsistent with NRS 361.333, which mandates equitable treatment of similarly situated parcels. Pursuant to NRS 361.355, we respectfully and truly respectfully request the Board of Equalization to adjust the land component of our assessed value to bring it into conformity with verified market evidence and Nevada standards for fair, uniform, and supportable assessment practices. Thank you very, very much for your time, attention, and continued service to ensure Carson City assessments reflect both fairness and factual market reality.
Great, thank you so much. And for those that you did speak, just to remind you to sign that sheet on the way out. Sir, if you'd like to come up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Rick Aronson. I live at 1718 Wellington West in the Wellington Crescent neighborhood. I bought my property in 2019. I want to express my total support for Mr. Chang and Ms. Stannerson, Sky Castle Trust's appeal of this year's land assessment rate increase. This increase does not just affect Mr. Chang and Ms. Stannerson. The assessor's land rate increases affect all homeowners' land assessments in our Wellington Crescent neighborhood. My first year land assessment was $63,000. My second year, it only increased 3%. Third year, it increased 10%. Fourth year, it increased 14.7%. Fifth year, it only increased 5%. Sixth year, it decreased 2.3%. Last year saw no increase. The rate change was flat. And now in 2026, the assessment has my land value increased 47.3%. That's a 36% increase over the entire first 6 years combined and equals a 96% increase in 7 years. Mr. Chang and Ms. Stannerson have done their homework, as you will hear shortly in their statement. I sincerely hope that you will take notice and that you will consider reevaluating the assessor's work for the 2026-27 valuation year and consider reassessing our land values lower in line with similarly adjusted increases or decreases of the last 7 years. He will also point out the assessor has taken much smaller lots for use as comparable lots to properties in Wellington Crescent and has excluded pertinent information such as significantly lower assessment increases for similar properties in neighborhoods adjacent to Wellington Crescent. The points he will make regarding our residents belonging to and paying dues to a property owners association for the purposes of maintaining neighborhood roads and drainage, snow removal, neighborhood gates, and lighting upkeep are not insignificant when compared to adjacent neighborhood properties which rely on city funding for the same services. Adjacent neighborhood properties should have higher land assessments, not lower, due to their benefiting of those city services that Wellington Crescent property owners do not enjoy. It is apparent the land assessment increases levied upon the owners of properties in Wellington Crescent are significantly higher than the assessments levied upon comparable properties in adjacent neighborhoods. This should not stand. This should be corrected. I implore this board to do the right thing, find in favor of Mr. Chang and Ms. Stannerson, and to provide relief to all Wellington Crescent property owners by reviewing and correcting the assessor's work for the 2026-27 valuation year to legitimate, justifiable assessments. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to come up and speak at this point in time? Okay, now we're done with public comment. Anybody online or anything? Anybody calling in? Let's see here. Now we're up for possible action approval of minutes from the February 18th, 2025 meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the February 2025 meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now we're up to item 5 for discussion only. Let's see here. Is this where we do orientation?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Let's see here. Okay, so it's item 5 for discussion only. Carson City Board of Equalization member orientation, Assessor Kimberly Adams, Deputy District Attorney Mihaela Niagos.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board
Butcher your name
members,
enough.
and members of the public. For the record, my name is Mihaela Niagos. I think you did a very good job pronouncing my name. I would like to take a moment to walk you through a brief refresher on open meeting law and ethics in government. So what is open meeting law or sunshine laws? You will find it in the Nevada Revised Statutes, Chapter 241. And basically the requirement is for transparency in all government actions. All public bodies exist to aid in the conduct of the people's business. So your actions and deliberations must be taken openly. When does open meeting law apply? It applies to all public meetings of the public bodies in Nevada, including the Board of Equalization. A meeting requires a quorum and deliberation or action. So what are those things? A quorum is typically a simple majority. So in your case, there are 5 board members, and a simple majority would be 3 members. So if you have a minimum of 3 members present, then there is a quorum. It also requires deliberation, which means to collectively examine, weigh, and reflect upon the reasons for or against an action. And an action means the majority of the members present. For example, if you have 3 or 4 members present, if you have 3 members present, you have to have 2 members vote in the affirmative for a motion to pass. There are situations which constitute a meeting that are not readily apparent. So that is something that you want to take into consideration. For instance, if you have electronic communications between a quorum, that can constitute a meeting. So if you want to reach out to one member individually instead of replying to all members that is an available option to avoid, um, having a quorum and having a discussion. There's also something that is called serial communications or walk-in quorums, which can also constitute a meeting, is just talking to members individually with the same concept of deliberation and taking action. There are also other requirements of a public meeting. Open meeting law requires a notice and an agenda. It also requires that every topic that will be discussed during a public meeting to be clear and complete. If actions are for action, you have to denote that they are for possible action. And also, we've just seen an example of public comment periods and restrictions. Moving quickly to Nevada ethics laws, you will find that in NRS Chapter 281. Nevada ethics law is implicated when you are a voting member of a board or commission. And you have to think of whether you have certain commitments in private capacity. And if those exist, you make sure that you're in compliance with ethics laws. What does it mean to have a commitment in a private capacity? You look at basically 6 different relationships. When you take an action on an item, does it affect a spouse or domestic partner, a member of your household, someone within 3rd degree of consanguinity or affinity, blood or marriage? And those are children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, parents, siblings, nieces and nephews, grandparents, uncles, aunts, great-parents. Also, do you take an action that influences an employer or an employee relationship, or someone with whom you have a substantial continuing business relationship, or something that is substantially similar? This is kind of a catch-all provision, like if you serve on a nonprofit board of directors, that is substantially similar to an employment, for example. So bottom line is that you cannot benefit from that relationship. And if you're in a situation where you feel that your commitment in a private capacity influences your decision, there are requirements of disclosure and abstention. Nevada Commission on Ethics provides some tips for compliance related to commitments in a private capacity. And I just wanted to run through those quickly. I think those are good tips to take into account. When you serve in a board, you may want to create and maintain a list of all your commitments that you have in private capacity, and carefully review agendas prior to the meeting or other documents before you make a decision or take an action in your public capacity for commitments in private capacity. And always, if you have any questions, consult with your deputy district attorney. I am yours today. Before you take action, if you believe that you may have that commitment in a private capacity, because I can help you prepare a disclosure and discuss your situations when an abstention is necessary. Thank you for your attention. And let me know if you have any questions. You can also reach me privately as well.
Fantastic. Kimberly,
Good morning.
do you have
Happy
any?
Tuesday.
Yeah.
I just want to thank all of the board members for being here today, and I appreciate the changes that we made as far as how the board packets are delivered to you. We are, at the direction of the Board of Supervisors, trying to streamline these processes throughout the meetings and have them more uniform. So I thank you for the growing pains this year with the packets, and hopefully we will make a few little tweaks for next year and we won't have the technical difficulties we had this year. So thank you. Staff, I'm going to introduce Sheena Nelson, our appraiser, Bianca Galliana, I'm not going to do it, Galliana, okay. Shannon Silva, my chief deputy assessor, and again, Kimberly Adams, Carson City Assessor for the record. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now on to meeting items. 6.1 for possible action, hearing, discussion, and possible action on review and approval of stipulation agreement for ABH1, LLC, 1000 to 1070 East William Street, APN 002-123-07, and 1100 to 1150 East William Street, APN 002-123-08, case number 2026-000031. So I think what we should do first, hear from the appellant.
Thank you, Jed. The appraiser, Sheena, will identify the property, and then
Perfect,
I don't see the appellant here
There's no
because it was a
preliminary,
stipulation.
right?
Thank
If
you.
you could run us through the process.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. Thank you for being here. My name is Sheena Nelson, for the record, property appraiser, Carson City Assessor's Office. I'll repeat you there, Jed. Case number 2026-000031 is identified as APN 002-123-07, located at 1000, 1050, and 1070 East William Street, and APN 002-123-08, located at 1100 and 1150 East William Street. Combined, these parcels consist of 4 office buildings with a total of 117,248 square feet of gross building area. These offices had and still have several state of Nevada tenants. However, the assessor's office is aware, as was confirmed by the petitioner, that the state is in the process of vacating many of its leases, thus resulting in a higher than typical vacancy percentage for those properties. So after reviewing the information provided by the appellant, the assessor's office and the petitioner agreed to a stipulated reduced taxable value of $2,862,716. That is for APN 002-123-07 and $2,718,004 for APN 002-123-08. That is a reduction of $1,595,436 total taxable value for the 26-27 fiscal year.
Great, thank you so much. Now, I'd like to entertain a motion. Yes,
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
So when do these state offices, how soon do they plan on vacating?
Some of them have already vacated. They had, I believe, vacated before this owner purchased the property. Other than that, there are 5 expected vacancies in the next fiscal year, 27-28.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to approve the value stipulation for case number 2026-000031.
I second it.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now,
Chairman
yes.
Block, just a clarification for Mihaela. Do we need to have the motion specifically give the dollar amounts, or is the motion heard sufficient?
It is sufficient as long as it's clear on the record.
Okay,
the
thank you.
amount.
Thank you.
Okay. Now to item 6B. Let's see here. For possible action, hearing, discussion, and possible action on review and approval of stipulation agreement for Carson Southgate LLC, 4219 and 4287 South Carson Street, assessor's parcel number APN 009-125-22, and for 4209 South Carson Street, APN 009-125-24, case number 2026-000029. Over to the assessor's office.
Sheena Nelson, for the record, property appraiser, Carson City Assessor's Office, case number 2026-000029, as identified as APN 009-125-22, located at 4219 and 4287 South Carson Street, better known as the Big 5 Big Lots Building, and APN 009-125-24, located at 4209 South Carson Street, better known as Hobby Lobby. APN 009-125-22, that's the Big 5, is approximately 41% vacant due to the departure of Big Lots in late 2024, early 2025. Due to the vacancy of a major tenant, the landlord has reduced the rent for Big Five until which time they're able to fill that vacancy. For APN 009-125-24, Hobby Lobby was vacant prior to Hobby Lobby occupying that space. That building was vacant from late April 2024 to early April 2025 due to the departure of Burlington Coat Factory. In addition, approximately 15% of that gross building area is not occupied by Hobby Lobby and is unleasable due to lack of access. So after reviewing the information provided by the appellant, the assessor's office and the petitioner agreed to a stipulated reduced taxable value of $4,704,806 for APN 009-125-22 and $6,075,592 for APN 009-125-24. That is a reduction of $1,268,086 total taxable value for both parcels there for the 26-27 fiscal year.
Okay, great. Anybody on the board have any questions for the assessor's office? I'd like to entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the value change stipulation for case number 2026000029.
We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right. So now we're on to item 6C that we heard a little bit about earlier. And it is for possible action, hearing, discussion, and possible action on review and on petition for review of assessed valuation of Sky Castle REV, the Revocable Living Trust, dated 9/22/22. Richard Chang and Gretchen M. Standerson, did I get close? Trustees at 1686 Wellington West, assessors parcel number APN 007-371-09, case number 2026-000028. Let's see here. They implemented a new thing where everything is on attachments, and so we can see all this stuff, which is, the first part of this, the notifications and everything. There's quite a bit of information. So I think as we go, we'll have the appellant state their case. We'll have the assessors give their evidence, and then we'll go back to the appellant. Is that how you guys like to do it?
Yes, and I also wanted to remind everyone that witnesses have been properly sworn, and you are reminded that you are under oath prior to testifying.
Okay, and so should we also state that the public comment that was associated with this item, we don't need to hear that again? Or are we going to entertain them to?
It is within your discretion.
Okay,
Still subject to the 3 minutes.
Because usually it's usually during this process that we're in now that all the public comments would have happened. So it's kind of a little bit backwards this time. So if we've already heard what we've already heard, I don't think we need to hear again. But I know taxes are emotional, so everybody take a deep breath and just relax. We're just volunteers here to see if we can help you out. And so there you have it, and give us your evidence or your appeal.
I do have some supplementary.
Excuse me, Chairman Block. Appraiser, Chief Deputy Assessor Silva needs to identify the property first, and then the petitioner will state his case.
See what
Sorry
happens
to
when-
interrupt.
See what happens when you do this once a year. So from the assessor's office.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Shannon Silva, Chief Deputy Assessor of Carson City Assessor's Office. The subject property is parcel number 007-37109, located at 1686 Wellington West in the Wellington Crescent subdivision, which is a private gated community consisting of custom-built homes on primarily rectangular 1-acre parcels. It's an improved residential lot with a 4,057 square foot home built in 1999. The taxable value of the land is $353,500 with improvements valued at $808,759 for a total taxable value of $1,162,259. The market neighborhood consists of the subdivisions Wellington Crescent, Kensington, Longview, and Adams Estates, which are all within the same geographic vicinity with custom-built homes on non-subdividable parcels. The appellant is appealing the assessor's determination of land value.
Okay. Any other adjustments, Kimberly? I think, go ahead, folks.
I would like to hand out at this time, handout to the Board of Equalization members, supplementary documentation.
One has to be on the back for the public.
No, on the table in the back.
So is this in addition to what's already in our packets as far as exhibits and everything else? Okay, never, okay, if you'd
Okay,
like to
yeah.
continue on.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. My name is Richard Chang, and I'm appearing with my wife here, Gretchen Standerson, on behalf of the Sky Castle Revocable Living Trust for the property at 1686 Wellington West. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to our appeal and for the time you devote to ensuring fairness and equity in our property tax system. We will focus on 3 core points. Number 1, Wellington Crescent received a 47% land increase, while directly comparable 1-acre parcels received 8%. Number 2, required adjustments for POA burden, lot size, and market decline were not documented despite NAC requirements. Number 3, while vacant land sales may be used as comparable evidence under NAC 361 Spot 1179, those sales must be adjusted so that the resulting land values reflects the contributory value of land to an improved single-family residence as required by NRS 361 Spot 227-1A2. We are appealing the 2026-2027 fiscal year land valuation because of the magnitude and distribution of the increase are not supported by the way the sales comparison and allocation methods must be applied under NRS 361 Spot 227 and NAC 361 Spot 11795. And because of the result produces unequal treatment of similar situated parcels. I'll briefly address 2 preliminary points from the assessor's written response. First, on terminology, I recognize the distinction between assessed value and taxable value. My appeal is directed at the full cash determination of $353,500, from which both values flow. The core question is whether that full cash value is legally and economically justified. Second, on vacant land methodology, NAC 361 Spot 1179 describes the general sales comparison approach, but it does not override NRS 361 Spot 227-1A2. In fact, NRS 361 Spot 227 expressly distinguishes between valuation of vacant land and valuation of improved land. Improved land must be valued consistently with the use of its improvements. I'm not suggesting NAC 361 Spot 1179 contradicts the statute, only that it must be applied in a way consistent with NRS 361, Spot 227. I'm not disputing the assessor's authority to use mass appraisal, vacant land sales, or the permitted look-back period. My appeal is about how those tools were applied to our parcel. The selection and adjustment of sales, the stratification of properties, and the resulting allocation of value to our land.
Point 1, unequal stratification and 47% versus 8% increases. Under NAC 361, Spot 11795, properties must be stratified into appropriate groups by location, zoning, use, and other relevant characteristics, so that similarly situated properties are treated consistently. On the west side, that did not occur. Please refer to Exhibit 3 in the handout. The properties on Plantation Drive and Cogorno Way increased by 8.4%. Properties on Brush Street, Alfred Way, and Winnie Lane increased by roughly 10 to 21%. Wellington Crescent parcels received increases of 47 to 47.29%. All of these parcels share single-family residential zoning, similar access, utilities, views, and topography, the same highest and best use as West Side home sites, limited recent vacant lot sales, and availability of vacant lots. In the Assessor's Exhibit B, Book 7, the West Side areas are shown on the plat book. Please refer to Exhibit 1 in the handout. The 4 areas used to support the 47% increase for Wellington are highlighted. Areas number 37, number 25, number 28, and the new development number 67. By contrast, areas number 18 and number 19, Cogorno Way and Plantation, are directly across Ash Canyon with 1-acre parcels and similar characteristics, yet they received only an 8% increase. So the basic question is, what justifies a roughly 38.88% higher increase for Wellington Crescent compared to directly comparable 1-acre parcels just across Ash Canyon? The appraiser's response states that 8 vacant land sales were used and the allocation method applied. One of those sales was a 1-acre Wellington Crescent parcel that sold for approximately $475,000 on April 8th, 2024. In a subdivision with only about 56 parcels and only 1 remaining vacant lot, a single high transaction can disproportionately influence the indicated base lot value. And it does not explain why that methodology or that level of increase was applied only to Wellington and not to Plantation or Cogorno, which are essentially the same type of property. NAC 361, Spot 117951, requires sufficient strata so that all property types are appropriately represented and treated uniformly. If the methodology used for Wellington is correct, it must be applied uniformly to similarly situated parcels. If it is not applied uniformly, that is a stratification problem under NAC 361, Spot 11795. No evidence in the record shows that Wellington Crescent constitutes a distinct economic stratum that justifies more than double, or in some cases 5 times, the increase applied to nearby similar parcels.
Point 2. The assessor's response indicates that vacant land sales from Adams Estates, Kensington, and Longview were used to establish base lot values. While these areas where roads and related infrastructures are maintained by the county, Wellington Crescent is different. Please refer to Exhibit 5 in the handout. We are the only private property owners association on the west side. Our community collectively owns our streets, streetlights, and road signs, and we are responsible to the middle of the street on our frontage. Residents pay an annual POA fee of about $1,100 today, which funds road maintenance, resurfacing, and repairs, snow removal, street lighting, street signage, and traffic control. We pay full county property taxes, including services we do not receive in our subdivision. We also pay POA dues to provide those same services privately. That is a real ongoing financial burden that a rational buyer will factor into what they're willing to pay for a Wellington Crescent lot. More importantly, that $1,100 POA amount is not fixed. Under our governing documents, the POA may increase dues whenever necessary to fund road work, snow removal, or capital projects, and any increase becomes a mandatory deed-recorded obligation on every current and future owner. In other words, it's an open-ended, potentially rising private infrastructure cost that comparable county service parcels simply do not bear. Under NAC 361, Spot 11795-2A2, the assessor must adjust sales prices for differences in location and governmental restrictions, and under NAC 361, Spot 11881B2, adjustments are required for differences in locations and economic characteristics that affect value. The assessor's response does not show any adjustment for the POA burden. By valuing Wellington Crescent land at the same rate as county service land, the valuation ignores this documented ongoing private infrastructure cost that inflates the base lot value for Wellington parcels.
Point 3. Please refer to Exhibit 2 in the handout. The assessor indicates that 8 vacant land sales were analyzed to develop a $375,000 base lot value, and that 0.65-acre Adams Estate lots were combined with 1-acre parcels to derive that figure. Smaller lots almost always sell at a higher price per square foot due to diminished marginal utility, and NAC 361 Spot 1188 expressly requires adjustments for differences in physical characteristics and size. Our parcel is a fully improved 1-acre, non-subdividable home site with no incremental development potential. The assessor's response does not show any worksheet with a downward size adjustment, excess land adjustment, or recognition that our 1-acre lot already has horizontal infrastructure in place, while the smaller vacant lots do not. That omission pushes the indicated value for Wellington Crescent higher than it would be if those adjustments were properly made. On market conditions, the assessor states that sales from July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2025 were analyzed and that more weight was given to recent sales. NAC 361 Spot 11882A requires documented mathematical adjustments for market conditions. Simply, giving more weight to certain sales is not a substitute for actual time adjustments. Please refer to Exhibit 4 in the handout. During the relevant period, Carson City home prices declined by about 13.3% year over year as of December 2025, while our land value was increased 47.29%, and the improvement value on the same parcel declined. The assessor's own records show land at $240,000 in 2024, 2025, $240,000 in 2025, 2026, and then $353,500 in 2026 to 2027. Using sales from the earlier period when land was still at $240,000, the response does not explain why those same sales now justify a 47.29% increase. NAC 361 Spot 11882B says adjustments for market conditions must reflect increases or decreases in the same general area and classification of property. Here, values in the broader market declined, yet Wellington Crescent land alone was sharply increased. Without negative time adjustments to the older sales, the indicated land value overshoots actual contributory value in a declining market. The record does not show any documented negative time adjustments. This leads to a larger statutory issue under NRS 361 Spot 227. First, in a cooling market, it is not economically consistent for land to appreciate sharply, while the improvement on that land, same land depreciates, absent a change in lawful use or utility, which did not occur here. Second, the assessor's written statement that the allocation method was used due to scarcity of land in this neighborhood shows that she effectively priced our improved home site as if it were scarce, speculative vacant land. NRS 361 Spot 227 1A permits all potential uses for vacant land, but subsection 1A2 requires improved land to be valued consistently with the use of its improvements. Our parcel is improved with a long-standing single-family residence. It must be valued as an improved single-family home site rather than land primarily influenced by speculative vacant land pricing. While vacant land sales can be used as comparable data, they must be adjusted to reflect the actual constrained use of improved property. Without those adjustments, the $353,500 land component exceeds the land's real contributory value to the improved property in a declining market and risks violating the full cash value ceiling in NRS 361 Spot 2275.
In conclusion, in our requested action. To summarize, NRS 361, Spot 227, 1A2 requires improved land to be valued consistently with the use of the improvements. Our parcel is an improved single-family home site, not speculative vacant land. NEC 361, Spot 11795, and NAC 361, Spot 1188 require proper stratification and documented adjustments for vacant to improved differences, POA infrastructure costs, lot size, and market conditions. Those adjustments are not shown in the record for Wellington Crescent. If this methodology were correct, it should apply uniformly, yet comparable 1-acre parcels on Plantation and Cogorno received 8% increases, while Wellington Crescent parcels were raised by 47%. No clear economic reason is documented for that disparity. The central issue in this appeal is not whether land values increased, but whether Wellington Crescent alone increased by 47%, while directly comparable 1-acre parcels increased 8%. A disparity the assessor's response does not explain. Under NRS 361, Spot 227, and NAC 361, Spot 11795, our property has been improperly stratified, insufficiently adjusted, and overvalued. I respectfully request that the board correct the land value for this parcel under NRS 361, Spot 357 by adopting either the prior 2025-2026 assessed land value of $84,000 or a uniform percentage increase consistent with similar situated west side parcels, such as 91,056, which is an 8% increase, like Cogorno Way and Plantation, similar 1-acre lots. Uniform assessment is a central principle of Nevada property taxation, and that stratification and adjustment rules in NAC 361, Spot 11795, exist to ensure that similar properties do not receive materially different treatment without clear documented justification. Thank you, Chair, and members, for your consideration of this appeal.
All right, thank you very much. Do any of the board members have some questions for the appellant for clarification?
I have a question.
Okay.
It was stated that there's no other private roads on the west side, and I believe there is on King and Longview. Isn't there a? The west side of Longview and north side of King.
States, I think, is a private, sorry, thank you. Kimberly Adams for the record, assessor. Bianca, do you recall what book that is off the top of your head? Book 7.
Are you speaking of Kings Canyon Estates? Or
I'm-
Longview and Kings
Right.
Canyon Road? That is not a,
Well,
in general, it's not a private. However, there are smaller homes. It's not gated.
yeah, I know they're not gated, but
On an HOA.
they do have private streets.
Yes, they do. Yep,
Okay.
and private walks,
And private
walkways.
walks, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so does the new development, the Adams development is also gated.
It's gated?
It's gated.
With,
But I believe that street is city. Am I correct?
I'm almost there.
yeah, I think that one is city.
Yeah.
Mo doesn't like that.
Sorry, I'm at the mercy of technology.
I do have one comment to the gentleman. Very well done.
Thank you.
I'm a real estate agent, so I can follow you very well on all these numbers. I do have a question though. When we go to value, homes in Wellington are going to be higher priced per square foot than Cogorno or Plantation. That's an older subdivision. It's still on septic. It doesn't have views. So those are not, it's kind of apples and oranges when we go out and do, evaluation on land value. Just saying?
I appreciate your question. We actually have friends that live over there, and we've seen their homes, and we actually have the exact same views. I mean, we back up to Ash Canyon. There's no material difference, and we're all both 1 acre lots.
Well, I used to live on Plantation, so I'm very familiar also. So
They're very nice homes.
they're very
Plantation,
nice.
yeah.
It is very nice.
Yeah.
But having a private gated community in itself creates a higher value to specific buyers. They like that. So it makes
That's-
your property a little bit more valuable is what I'm trying to say.
I think
Which
that's-
is good news, by the way, when you want to go on the market. You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, and that's an opinion. However, as I stated in my oral argument here, I believe that, this is a fact that we are a POA, and as a POA, we do have additional cost, and we have assessments and such.
And I do hear that,
So,
and I will be asking, does that come into consideration? That's what I was wondering.
At this point, Kimberly, did you find?
Adams Estates is definitely a private roadway. The new development that Silver Oak has, the multifamily development, that's also private. As far as on the west side, I don't see any others that are private. And again, Wellington Crescent is the only gated subdivision within Carson City. Well, you have Quail Park down, but that's not on the west side. Yes, yeah, but not residential. Or will be, yeah, will be.
Okay, so should we go to the assessor's portion of this? It might answer some of our questions before we even get there. So we'd like to hear from the assessor's office. How you came about this?
Okay. So Shannon Silva, for the record, Chief Deputy Assessor. I'd like to start. Oh. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay.
You have to move it even closer. There you go.
Shannon Silva, for the record, Carson City Chief Deputy Assessor. I'd like to start by stating, as the appellant did point out, there is that distinction between the assessable and taxable value on his application or his appeal form. He did utilize assessed values rather than taxable values in the taxable value portion, just so that you are aware. The 123,735 indicated on his appeal form is the assessed value. The taxable value is the 353,500. The appellant property sold for $1,865,000 on September 29th, 2022. The sales date falls within the statutory allowable sales date range, and therefore it is included in the analysis that determined the allocated land value for this neighborhood. Land was valued, determined doing sales and market analysis. Vacant land sales were first considered as required by statute, and then the allocation method was used in combination with available land sales per NAC 361-119. There were 8 vacant land sales, as stated by the appellant, in the market area during this time frame. 3 sales occurred within the last 15 months of the statutory lien date and were the most comparable in parcel size and property age. 1 being in Wellington, 1 in Longview, 1 in Kensington. Vacant sales land comparison was performed using the mass appraisal technique as required by NAC 361-1179 and 11795. This did result in a base lot value of $375,000, which you will find in Exhibit 2 on page 40. Utilizing a cost per square foot from the sales comparison analysis indicated the land value would be $399,000. However, we will typically utilize base lot values when we're dealing with subdivision neighborhoods. Additionally, in Exhibit 2 on page 41, you'll find a sales comparison approach of vacant sales using the most comparable vacant sales to the subject property. The subject land value is $812 a square foot, which is $270 a square foot less than the average $1,082 a square foot of the comparable sales. Because of the potential for higher selling prices resulting from the scarcity of vacant land in this neighborhood, in accordance with NAC 361-119, the allocation method as prescribed by NAC 361-1204 was analyzed and deemed to be the most appropriate method to determine the land value in this area. That analysis can be found in Exhibit 3 on page 48. An allocation percentage of 28% was applied to the sales based on the analysis in Exhibit 4 on page 54. This percentage fell in the middle of the historical range established from the inception of Wellington Crescent subdivision to date. The allocation approach produced a median land value of $353,500 with an average value of $368,060. The total taxable value of sold properties compared to their sales prices of the improved sales in the subject neighborhood averaged 33% below market value. Additionally, a sales comparison approach of improved sales is provided using the most comparable improved sales to the subject property to further show that the taxable value of the subject property does not exceed market value. You'll find this on Exhibit 5 on page 56. When a review was done on the appraiser's work, and it was determined that the land value, we're required to value land value based on its market value. It was discovered that for several years that the land values were not increasing as the market was increasing, and that's why there's such a substantial increase this year to this market, because that was adjusted to reflect what the statute requires to be at market value of the land. The improvement value of $808,750, which is not in dispute, was determined using the cost approach of all of the property improvements utilizing the Marshall and Swift costing manual as it existed on January 1st of the current fiscal year, which is required by statute. A formula is applied using the replacement cost new less straight line 1.5% depreciation per year based on the year built of the structure. This is known as the RCNLD, or replacement cost new less depreciation, and is calculated in accordance with 361-227 and NAC 361-128. NRS 361-227 sub 5 requires that computed taxable value of any property must not exceed its full cash value. The taxable value is lower than the market value, therefore economic obsolescence was not applied to the improvements. An itemized breakdown of property components is shown on the Marshall and Swift reports in Exhibit F, pages 59 through 61. And applicable statutes and administrative codes are on page 62 through 66 for your reference. When utilizing the allocation method, we do build depreciation back in so that we're not overinflating land values as a result of our straight line depreciation versus a market depreciation on the improvements. Using the current market evidence and the time frame allowed per NAC, our office has concluded that both the land value and the total taxable value does not exceed the full cash value as required by NRS 361-227. The assessor's office has included a sales comparison analysis of recent geographically and characteristically similar vacant land sales and allocation analysis of the same, utilizing improved sales. All methods produce total values higher than the current taxable value, do not exceed full cash value, and support the $353,500 established site value. Therefore, the assessor's office recommends that land value remain the same.
Chairman Block, if I could just add, the appellant discussed other comparable properties, Ash Canyon, Ormsby, Winnie Lane. We have those properties in a different market area for our analysis, and I wanted to put it on the record that the same methodology was applied to those properties as well. An allocation method was done on those properties as well, and that supported a increase to their value up to $255,000. So the same methodology was used to a similar neighborhood. We don't consider those properties in that neighborhood as comparable to the subject property. Additionally, public comment has discussed the property tax cap. So the property tax cap is a cap on the amount that the property taxes can increase from one year to the next. It is not a cap on the amount that the assessment can increase or decrease from one year to the next. The methodology that we are mandated by Nevada revised statutes and Nevada administrative code is still the same. We still have to appraise land at or near market value, and the improvements are valued at or near market value. I'm sorry, the land value is at or near market value. Improvements are based on replacement cost, new less depreciation. The costing for those improvements are mandated by a national estimator program called Marshall and Swift. When we do mass appraisal in the state of Nevada, we are not allowed to take into consideration homeowners associations, what services they pay for or do not pay for. That analysis is not brought into when we do appraisal for ad valorem tax purposes. A fee appraiser may look into those, or a real estate agent setting market value will look into those. We do not. It's not part of our analysis. Another item that was brought up are the tax rates and what property taxes pay and the services that they get back. That is also not part of our valuation under the law. We are not allowed to take that into consideration. I think that was all I had, and we're here for questions. Thank you.
So the 3% is on single family, the 8% is on commercial, and that's basically what you would be paying in effect on your property taxes each year, would be
That
those
is correct.
increases.
That is
That's where the cap is, the out-of-pocket, not the assessed valuation.
That is correct. As long as it is their primary residence, they have turned in their property tax cap claim form, and they are receiving that 3% cap, and there has been no new construction, meaning they didn't put on an additional garage, they haven't added any other site improvements for that first year, they are eligible for that 3% cap. So even if the valuation increased, their property taxes are capped at that 3%.
And I just want to highlight that you said that's for primary residences. If I own a single-family house that's an investment property, that's going to be taxed at an 8% rate.
Correct. It cannot exceed 8%.
So Kimberly, you were just talking about those other neighborhoods. Does Cogorno and Plantation fall into those neighborhoods that you were referencing that you don't think are similar to the Wellington Crescent?
We have several properties on Kings Canyon Road, Ash Canyon, Longview, Brush, Alfred, North Winnie Lane, Freedom Court, generally all the other ones in that area that are 1 acre or above, that fall into that alternate neighborhood. Online, it would show up as Book 7, 1 acre northwest. And again, that same allocation was done on those properties, and that supported a value of $255,000.
Thank you.
Okay, question? Just to clarify, so why are those properties considered a different area than Wellington? I mean, it is the same area, sort of. But
Based on our analysis for the 2026, 2027 fiscal year and the comparable sales in those different neighborhoods, those are not as similar as Wellington Crescent. I think because of the custom homes, some of the other ones may not be as custom. There's a lot of variables that go into determining those neighborhoods. Now, when we dig into it further this next year, we may decide maybe we don't need to separate them out. That may be in 2 years from now, 3 years from now. It just depends on what market data we have to determine which neighborhood best fits for those comparables. You may have something more to add, Shannon.
Shannon Silva for the record, as Colette pointed out, they are also those a lot older neighborhoods. Corgonio neighborhood is about 20 years older than the neighborhoods that we have in this area. So that is something we also take into consideration because the market takes that in consideration. The older a home is, the more maintenance it's going to require. they typically don't sell for as much.
Question. Why the huge jump in 1 year? Is that all based on the Adams development?
No, what that is based on is basically a review was done of staff's work. It was determined during that review that the Wellington, Crescent, Kensington, Longview, Adams subdivision, over the years, they were not increasing to remain at market value like they should have been. And once we discovered that, that correction was made, and it happened to be during this year. With the tax cap in place, when we do find those errors, we correct them, knowing that it's not going to have an effect on the taxpayers' taxes, but it does ensure that we are in compliance with statute.
Would that also be consistent for the other subdivisions like Kingston Park? Because there are other, right by Wellington, did their taxes go up as well based on their land values?
Pretty much most of them did go up. Some of them did remain the same. A lot of it depended on the analysis that was done by the appraiser who did those various areas. This one, when I looked at it, discovered that the allocation percentage that was being used was an allocation percentage that was more suitable to tract home subdivisions. It was a 20% analysis that compounded over several years, resulted in that value being significantly less than it should have been. And like I said, the 28% allocation that we used was a current allocation that was done. I did compare that historically within the Wellington Crescent, and it did fall right in the middle range of what was typical for that subdivision. The highest, I believe, at one point was 34%. The lowest was 24%. The current is at 28%, and that was the percentage that I went with.
And I just want to clarify, I understand this, but I just want to, I want to clarify that on land value, your taxable amount is what someone would pay on an open market for that land.
Correct.
Okay. No depreciation.
No.
Thank you.
And you can also apply online. We have a place on our website where you
Yeah,
can.
properties that are receiving the 8% cap receive that form every year. Properties that are currently on the 3% cap receive it when the property changes ownership. If there's some type of change, like if somebody puts it in a trust, it will trigger that form to be sent out. If there's something going on in legislature that could potentially affect that tax cap, we may send them out to everyone in the entire county.
So to,
Been living in the same spot for 26 years. There's no reason to change the form. I mean,
no, if nothing's changed, but to clarify of what tax cap you're on, go to carsоncity.gov. You can find it all online there. So that's where it, but it does get mailed out.
Absolutely. Yes,
So-
absolutely.
No. The out-of-pocket money is based, the cap is based on the out-of-money pocket expense.
So
The tax cap does carry on each year. So if this got appraised land value went from 300,000 to $10 million, the 3% cap from you paying $4,500 this year only gets raised 3% next year, potentially next year. So that's kind of an outlandish scenario, but that's just to your out-of-pocket expense of what you are paying in tax, not assessed valuation, but in tax, is that 3% cap. And absolutely by our legislature, forever. And if it changes hands, it becomes a rental property, then it goes up to 8%, and that's by the Nevada legislature. So We've got that. So,
So if I may, Mr. Chair, in properties that are older, such as, built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, the tax cap went into place in 2005. That set the base for the cap. The cap stays with the property, not with the owner. So as properties change hands, that cap stays in place. So your property may be valued at $1 million, but your taxes may only be based on $400,000. Because that cap has been in place for so many years, there's a huge protection there. You could potentially see that increase of 3% until the point where the assessed valuation and that capped value that results in those taxes become equal.
and just for my clarification, the 47% increase was on assessed valuation.
Taxable.
Taxable valuation,
Yes.
not based on the tax cap amount of 3%.
Correct, yes.
So
Yeah.
we'll go back to the appellant.
Yeah, hi, Chair. Yeah, Chair, I just want to button up some of the comments that were made post argument here. I've addressed this in my speech. I do recognize the distinction between the assessed value and the taxable value. And my appeal is directed at the full cash value determination of $353,500. I'm not specifically stating the $123,725, of which both values flow. So you take the $353,500 at 35%, and then you'll get the $123,725. Okay, that we're square. As far as the comps that were used, the assessor used comps in Adams Estates. Adams Estates is a 0.65 acre lot. In real estate, if you take a smaller lot and you compare it to a 1 acre lot, we're at a disadvantage. So the square footage, dollar square footage is usually tend to be always higher for smaller lots. It's because of the marginal value of the actual usable space. So it tends to be higher. So this is not apples to apples. It's more like apples and oranges. Furthermore, the assessor states that Cogorno and a few other areas are 20 years older than us. It's 20 years older than us does it warrant a 6%, a multiple of 6% higher, 6 times higher than Wellington Crescent? 8%. They got 8% across the street. We're at 47%. Does that really warrant an 8 times multiple? 6 times multiple on 8%? We're right next door to each other. And there's some distinct differences, but we look at each other and, we have the same views. We have the same views. So materially, is it different? I believe the answer is no. Materially is not different.
If I may, had the values in this neighborhood been increasing as they should have over the past several years, that increase would have been more in line with what was in that other neighborhood. It was just a result of, over the years, those values not increasing as they should have, that resulted in such a huge increase during this 1 year. And that was to get everything back to where it is supposed to be.
So one last thing from me. I just want to point out there's a discussion about property taxes. I'm not discussing property taxes, discussing the value, the assessment of the land value. So we're fully aware of the 3% cap. That came out in 2005 by the Nevada State Legislature. It was AB 489, and that was passed. It was not passed by voters. Ergo, at some point in the future, the state can decide at any time they can change this. They can raise it, they can amend it, they can adjust it. So please bear that in mind.
Absolutely, that's why we call it the legislature. We have some public comment. If you'd like to come up, state your name for the record. You can pull the chair up if you want to.
I would just like to ask the assessor, I'm sorry, thank you. My name is Rick Aronson. The assessor is stating that the properties in Wellington Crescent have not been increased, the land assessments increased over the last several years, and that's why there's this huge jump of 47% on our land assessments. And she stated that the properties across Ash Canyon in these somewhat older neighborhoods, they have continually been increased incrementally over the last several years. My question is, those small increments over the last several years, do those add up to 47%? Thank you.
Thank you. Garrett, you have a question?
Hey, I'm gonna make some comments and some observations, and then I'll make a motion, and we can have some discussion. So I definitely think the 47% is where the heartburn lies. A lot of the heartburn lies is that big jump. And I'm happy to hear staff say that that should have been increased, because it should have been increased in 2024, should have been increased in 2025, and increased in 2026, which would have not led to a 47% jump in what you're looking at for taxable value on the land. But the comps, when I look at the comps, I mean, you have a comp in your own subdivision that sold just shy of 2 years ago for $475,000. The assessor has you at $353,500. In your handout, you state that the market has gone down 13%. In my day job, I sell real estate as well, but I'm also the president of Sierra Nevada Realtors, where you pulled some of this data from. And I report this data. I'm going to go do that later today, actually. We did not decline by that much. Single-family homes in Carson City went up 2% last year. So our median home price is $540,000. I don't think the comparables that you have here include all property types. For the type of property that you guys are dealing with, and you guys live in my opinion, the nicest neighborhood in Carson City. It's a great neighborhood, great location. My grandfather was the original land developer of that neighborhood. My dad built several homes in that neighborhood, so know the neighborhood well. But 475 is your own comp, and the city's at 353,500. Even if, and let's say the market went down 20%, I did some math. If it went down 20% in the last 2 years, that would be $95,000. And again, I'm going to put on the record, the market has not gone down 20% in the last 2 years in any way, shape, or form. That would be a minus of $95,000. So if I start at 475 and take 95,000 off of there, I'm now at $380,000, which is still higher than what the city has you at. I make a motion to deny the appeal for case number, let me find it real quick.
Before you make the motion, really quickly, I just wanted to make sure that we have all the evidentiary presentation done. And I know that the appellant had one supplemental exhibit that he presented this morning. And if we could, for the record, mark that as Exhibit F. So appellant's evidence, it goes A through F. And assessor's evidence is marked 1 through 6.
Perfect. Okay, I make a motion to deny a change in valuation for land value for case number 2026-000028.
Can we make one more comment? Or are we done with comments?
No, we're going to do discussion, but someone has to second a motion or not second the motion.
Hang on. We have a motion. Once we have a second on the motion, then we can have discussion on the motion. So do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Mary seconds the motion. Now, is there any discussion on the motion? Colette?
Yes, I'd like to say something. This is a hard pill to swallow. I understand. I'm right there. I so get it. And I wish there was a remedy, a compromise. I really do. However, for whatever reason, until Adams, I think Adams is what triggered this valuation to go up. And I hear your argument that they're not quite an acre lot, but in reality, as a sales agent, people are preferring the smaller lots, and they will pay more for that smaller lot than they will for the acre at this right now as this market stands, because they don't want the, as you well know, the maintenance of an acre. So I wish there was another remedy, but with the market moving up, and for those of you who might be putting your house on the market, there is a big need right now for inventory. So your homes are going to be more, I've heard the statements that houses weren't selling. There's many variables for that, market trends. But we're going to see something different here coming into spring. We have a lack of inventory, so it's going to push that value even up higher. So in a sense, even though this is a really hard pill to swallow, and I am so right there with you, I can see where the assessor has nowhere to go but up. It has to keep market trends going. So hopefully next year you'll be more protected and you won't see such a huge increase. But the good news is that your properties are worth a lot of money. Thank goodness for that. And they are very special. And I know you're shaking your head, but I get that they had no other where to go, because if we didn't have the Adams cells, I think this would have been a different story. And that's my opinion.
Okay, any more discussion on the motion? So, and just bear with us. We'll talk after the motion, however this goes. So we have a motion, we have a second. No more discussion on the motion with the board. Do I need to let the appellant have a comment on our motion?
You don't have to, but it's in your discretion if you'd like to give him another word.
I don't think it's going to make a difference, but sir, if you'd like to make your comment.
I guess the final comment is just fairness. We're just looking for equality. As far as like the one sale of 475 in Wellington Crescent, that's one sale. It's gonna skew a lot of the valuation. And I just want,
And that does happen. I mean, regardless of where we
Adams
are and stuff,
Estates is a PUD. We're a POA. There's a distinct difference.
but- Mhm.
And I clearly, there wasn't any consideration for that, and there should be. We have a lot of cost burden.
Well, I think that a lot of that is based on state statute. A lot of what the illustrious 63 do over on Carson Street, there's unintended consequences, and it's pretty tough when it doesn't go to a vote for the people. So I appreciate your comments. You have one final
Yes,
comment here.
so while we are required by statute to look at vacant land sales first, these values were not set based on those vacant land sales, because of the fact that when we looked at the vacant land sales, looked at the improvements, we did have the potential in a mass appraisal situation of being over market in a lot of these homes. That is why we went with the allocation and why it does have a lower land value, because those vacant sales were not the sales that were used to establish the values.
Okay. With all that said, I'd like to, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now, when is the State Board of Equalization? You can appeal this to the Nevada State Board of Equalization. And their meetings are usually in March.
Thank you, Chairman Block. Kimberly Adams, Carson City Assessor. The deadline to appeal to the State Board is March 15th. Their applications or the petitions for that are on the Department of Taxation website. They schedule those meetings, they could go all the way through September. We don't have any purview as far as their scheduling goes.
Now, you have till the 15th of March. I would recommend that you do that. I know you're going to do that. I can see the look in your face. It's not happy, and we encounter that. But really from all of us up here, we do appreciate all of you that showed up and all of you that made public comment, because sitting on that side is not as easy as sitting on this side. You know, everybody's emotions are up and everything else, and this seems kind of daunting. So I do appreciate that, and, you know, do your appeal. But thank you very much for looking at this information and doing something and making comments and letting the assessor know. Because when people just get mad and they stomp their feet and they don't do anything, it doesn't accomplish anything. So thank you very much for coming. Sure. Why don't we take a break for like 3 minutes? action. Hearing, discussion, and possible action on review and on petition for review of assessed valuation of Keith and Karen L. Schaefer, 5195 Gentry Lane, assessor's parcel number APN 010-263-04, case number 2026-000027. I'd like the assessor's office to introduce the item.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for your time today. I'm Bianca Galliano, property appraiser with the Carson City Assessor's Office for the record. The subject property, parcel number 010-263-04, is located at 5195 Gentry Lane and is located on the south end of Carson City, south of Prison Hill. The parcel was purchased on September 13, 2021 for $225,000 and was vacant land at that time. The residence was then built in 2023, which consists of a 2,435 square foot home and a 1,485 square foot basement, in addition to 1,057 square foot attached garage. The taxable land value is $170,000. The improvements are valued at $706,269 for a total taxable value of $876,269. Thank you.
You bet. Keith Schaefer, property owner. I'm kind of representing my wife as well, Karen. Appreciate you giving us some time, Chairman Block and members of the board. I hope this is not a waste of time. I get the math, I get the statutes, I understand, but I do have to tell you, it was quite a learning curve for us to understand assessed value, taxable value, taxes. And I want to express our gratitude to the assessor's office and their staff for helping us through that process and get some understanding of how our values were established and how our property was taxed. Just a little bit of history, very short. We purchased the property, as was talked about, in 2021. It was the last vacant lot on Gentry Lane in the subdivision just underneath Prison Hill. And just about every other house in that area had been built about 40 to 45 years ago, somewhere between 35 and 40 years ago. It was a beautiful lot. We looked at it 20 years ago, just about bought it, decided not to. Kids were in school, wanted to be close to some school stuff, and it still never sold. And so when it got time for us to build our forever home, we said, hey, let's build this little house up here so the kids can come back and grandkids come back. We're not naive. We did some math, but probably back in the 2019, 2021, 22 timeframe on, what operating costs, holding costs, what our costs would be to get into a home as opposed to buying another home in town. And we knew that there was going to be a leveling up of what the tax bill would be relative to what we were used to in a home that we had been in for 20 years. And it was a different part of town and comparatively. And so we had run some numbers and figured, well, if it's 2 times what the rest of the neighbors pay, it's what it's going to be. Long story short, when we got to the end of construction, it was going to turn into the final inspections and closing, which was kind of in between any time for us to petition any kind of assessed value. We got a number that was kind of in the $10,000-$12,000 range for taxes on our private home. Now, that's just the tax bill. That's not the assessed value. We worked with the assessor that we had worked with, and he said, what did you think about that? And I said, that's a lot higher than we thought. But we understood the assessed value. We said, hey, we will want to maybe petition this at some point in time. Whenever we could, we said, well, let's wait until we get the tax bill to see what it is. It was just kind of a verbal, this is what we think it might be. We got our tax bill. It wasn't quite that, but it was still fairly high. And we said, ooh, we need to petition that. But by the time we got our tax bill, it was already too late. You know that time frame. We didn't know at the time. You know, it's like we'd get some circular in the mail in November that says your assessed values are this. This is not a tax bill, and you put that away, and we didn't know the time frame there, and that you get it in November, middle to late sometime, but you have till January to petition. And so that ship had sailed for that tax year. So we had paid the end of the fiscal year for the construction time. It went up 3% the next year tax bill. And then we said, we just really should try to petition this and just see if we can understand how we got to this assessed value. So this and I'm guessing we're in the 26, 27 year valuation timeframe. Our hope was that we could kind of reboot that value so that going forward that, you know, we know it's going to go up a maximum of 3% per year, but we didn't want to get into hey, 3% on a $10,000+ tax bill is a whole lot different than a 3% on a 6 or an 8 or a 9, or the rest of our neighbors are in the $3,500 to $4,000 range. So we just tried to synthesize that in our mind and say, how does this work in a subdivision? How are the values assessed? Is our value, can it be, you know, the Marshall and Swift cost of replacement, independent of the neighborhood that it's in, and all of that stuff? And I don't agree with with the science and the law. So I'm not saying that the assessor has done anything wrong. We understand where they get their values. But I do want to bring to light a couple of things, just for the purposes of making this not a wasted time for us here when it gets to the time of a motion, to be very specific. I understand that we're not petitioning the tax dollar amount, and so I have to petition the valuations. So we looked at the valuations, and this all boils down to a couple of things. One main one was the quality of construction of the home was identified as a quality construction 4. I received the matrix of what quality construction was. I went through every item of those. I was the owner builder. I'm not a craftsman style. I'm not a custom home builder. I am in the industry. I'm a designer and an engineer, and I design buildings, and I have clients who we go through this process with, not the assessment so much, but valuations and building construction. So I wanted to push back a little bit on the fact that, hey, I know how this house is built. I know what the valuation is, and on several items, we were more in the quality 3. There were some that were in 4, and then there are a couple maybe just based on the pitch of the roof, but it's comp shingles, it's not tile, it doesn't have plastered walls and smooth, it's a orange peel texture. As we started to finish the home, we were getting down to let's do this. And so quality of construction does become a very real metric to evaluate this on. And I kind of evaluated that I could say this was in a 3.4 to 3.5 quality based on a Marshall and Swift 3.5 quality valuation. I know what it cost me to build the structure. I know what the land is valued at. So just in conclusion, kind of to get to the end of it, I can understand and I can make basis for quality of construction for that home based on what it is to be in the 500, and as is stated in here is pretty close, although I can understand it being a little higher, but a 561,800 as opposed to the value of the improvement of being 705,767, which is different than the number that she just said a second ago. She said 706, but I think that's what the assessment is in the printed assessment. Yeah, that's the building value, but what is listed in here in the motion is different. And I think that we get to a motion value different than what was in the assessed value. So yeah, she said the assessed value was 706,269 for the structure and 170 for the lot. Whereas in the motion, they're proposing 705,767 with 170 for the lot.
believe that was Bianca Galliano for the changes to the square footage and the corrections.
Yeah. And there's a lot behind this, and we don't need to drag you through that. But yeah, there were some fine tuning of square footages, didn't amount to much. But I was kind of interested. It was like, if I'm gonna do a petition, then I need to have the assessor come take a look at the house. So they come and look at the house and they walk away and they go, it went up. And I went, holy cow, you're kidding me. It's like, so we counted every brick, every square inch of rock on the front, every step. We went to the basement and said, it's a finished basement. But it has air, so we're gonna add some out for air. That, we resolved that. That's not part of where we're at now, but it was just little things like, we had them come over and it came back as, well, if you have us come over, it went up. And that didn't feel good. And so the other thing that kind of came out that I would like to add to this, because I know that in my petition statement, it was based on error in square footage and quality of construction, and that's kind of where we were at. And I know that my quality of construction calculated number in the matrix is significantly different than the stated value, but from the assessor in the quality 4 versus the quality 3.5. But I do believe, and I'm sorry, but I do believe that in a real estate market, that you can go to a neighborhood and say the structure itself can be deducted based on the neighborhood. Like, you can't just say, hey, this house in Wellington Crescent that is $950,000 for the structure is going to be $950,000 some other place in town if it's a 40-something-year-old subdivision with depreciated homes. I know that that's not how the law works and how the Marshall and Swift works. And I think that in the philosophy, they make the adjustment in the cost difference between homes in different communities on the land value, not on the replacement value. But I do believe that a high assessment and a high tax value will be a detriment to resale value compared to the other lots in my home. So just to give you a good idea, every house up and down my street, average price per square foot, there have only been 1 or 2 that have done any improvements that have modified their date, their depreciation date, right? They made some improvements to their home. There are some actually on the street that look as new as ours. And they're carrying an assessed tax value of what it would be of around the $4,000 or $5,000, but because of the abatement, they're only in the $3,500 range. So the depreciation still helps them to some degree, even though they look as new as our home. Mature landscaping and all the fences and everything, and we have yet to finish our landscaping, and we're afraid to do it, to be quite honest with you. We're afraid to put one more dollar into finishing and making this a nice home in the neighborhood if every time we turn around, it's gonna go up another few dollars in tax. So our petition is that we feel like, given with consideration for the age of the community, not the community, the actual neighborhood and the street that we're on, that we're asking for this consideration that would make our tax bill about $9,100, which is still a 2x multiplier on what the assessed tax value would be of the rest of the neighbors. So that's kind of where we're at and where we went and took it to a quality scenario. Oh, the one other thing I want to add, just for your edification, I think you'll find this fun to consider, because I agree with, I want to argue a different point, but I agree both sides. I agree that there are people out there that would look for a lot that isn't connected to city sewer. But when they came and looked at the lot and said, oh, you have a septic, well, that's another assessed value because it's an improvement to property. But there are several homes in the subdivision that are now connected to sewer. And I'm like, are their property values higher than ours? Every 1 acre lot in that subdivision is valued at $170,000 for this coming fiscal year. Whether they're now on septic or have recently been put on septic, because about half of that subdivision has now been put on septic, and half of Gentry, 2 houses away from us. We actually pumped the brakes on construction because we thought they were going to get to us, and I wasn't going to have to put in a $10,000 septic tank. but they didn't get there. So just 2 houses down. But all of the lots are valued at $170,000. Board Member Bureau, you said, hey, you know, in one of the last items, that, hey, these lots over here are not the same value because they have septics. Well, if that's true, we can't have it both ways. And so in my recommendation, I would recommend that the property value be valued at about 163. That was the subtraction of the septic value that was added. And the structure value be at around 562. And
Well, and like you say, there's going to be depreciation and everything else. And
true.
you know, one comment I have to say to you: don't be afraid of doing your landscaping. Yes, it might go up, but you know where I live, and my property taxes are low in a 150-year-old house.
I know.
But we get the.
But our office got a reboot.
Right.
Yeah,
But,
because
you know,
it's all new
everything's-
construction. I work at Resource Concepts.
Yeah. Now the property taxes for Bruce are quite a bit higher, I'm sure, with the brand new building.
You're right.
Gary, do you have some comments?
A couple things that stand out to me. 170 on the property value, I think is low. I think that's low. I mean, you paid $225 for it 5 years ago, so I think we all could agree that that's probably a little low. Would you sell your house for $732,000 today?
I don't think that's the issue.
Well, market value, which is
No,
where we're going to
no.
get assessed value from.
No, I appreciate that.
Hang on,
I appreciate
hang
that.
on a second. Everybody wants their assessed valuations and their property taxes to be absolutely the lowest possible until they go to sell that house. I remember talking to Jim Bagwell about that when he was in front of this years ago, but no, I wouldn't sell my house for that little, you know, but, and so it's kind of the, you know, yes, you know, the point taken, no, he probably wouldn't, but, you know, just.
Perfect. And then I'll make a motion to deny the change in value for case number.
Yeah, Kimberly, you have, they need to present their case.
I'm sorry, my appraisers have worked so hard on this, and even if it's just for practice.
And Garrett, being new on the board, your youthful experience is, you know, no, that's okay. No, it's all good.
Thank you.
Bianca Galliano for the record. So I'll go ahead and present now, thank you. A vacant land sales comparison analysis was performed as required by NAC 361.1179 and 11795, which is gonna be Exhibit 1, resulting in one cell that is most similar to the subject property in size. However, inferior due to topography. There were 4 total vacant land sales in this market area during this time frame. One property sold twice within this statutory lien date and is 0.63 acres smaller than the subject, and one is 1 acre larger and subdividable. Because of the potential for higher selling prices resulting from a scarcity of vacant land in this neighborhood, in accordance with NAC 361.119, the allocation method, as prescribed by NAC 361.1204, was also analyzed and was deemed the most appropriate method to determine land value. The allocation approach produced a land value of $170,000. It's going to be Exhibit J, page 81 and 82. Additionally, we did also complete a sales comparison approach of improved sales, and it is provided using the most comparable improved sales to the subject property to further show that the taxable value of this subject property does not exceed market value. You will find this in Exhibit K, page 83. The appellant is appealing the value of improvements in the quality class. The most weight was given to comparable 1 through 3 with an indicated average cost per square foot of $372. The subject total taxable value per square foot is $223.54. The current taxable value, $876,269, does not exceed the indicated market value. And then the assessor's office determined using current market evidence in this timeframe as allowed per NAC that the taxable value does not exceed full cash value as required by NRS 361.227. We have also, assessor's office has also included data to support the quality class and the improvement value for the subject property, as well as land data with recent geographically and characteristically similar vacant land and improved sales using multiple valuation methods. All sales are higher than the current net taxable value and support both the land and the improvements value for this subject. Therefore, the assessor's office recommends the current taxable remain as is, apart from the changes to correct the value associated with the size errors and to assess the property escaping taxation that was discovered. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions
Yeah,
for the
I have a
assessors?
question.
Okay,
If I
Mary.
could, please. I'm curious about the issue of the septic versus the sewer. Did he really get an increase in his assessment because he had a septic?
So a septic is added, we value it as site improvements. There is an NRS, and I will defer to Sheena Nelson here. She can help answer this question regarding the septic.
I can't cite, Sheena Nelson for the record, I can't cite that NRS that she just spoke of, but yes, septic tanks are taxable. There is an NRS regarding that, so it has to be added on there. So yes, plainly to answer your question, yes.
Just to respond to you responding about my comment. In our world, it's the opposite, just so you know. So if you're on are you on sewer or septic? Really, I thought everybody had to hook in up there.
There is no sewer in front of our property
Oh,
yet.
God, years ago, I thought it was already run. Okay.
So all I'm speaking to, and I apologize, I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you.
No, I learned something, but that's not how we look at it.
I
Just
can-
as in our field, it's actually in reverse.
So I can provide further comment if you prefer.
No, that's
Okay,
okay.
okay.
Just learn something.
I was just speaking to the difference in lots that are connected to cities' facilities versus lots that are not in that land value. And I've got plenty of clients who the first thing they'll say is, do we have city utilities, or we got to bring them to the site, bring them to the project? It's a little bit different with homes, right? There are a lot of people that would like to be on septic and not on city sewer, so.
Chairman Block,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry, Keith. Chairman Block, if I could just add, Kimberly Adams with the Carson City Assessor's Office. Any improvement to the property is subject to taxation. NRS 361 and NAC 361 provide specific improvements that are exempt from taxation, but unfortunately, having a septic tank is not. It is considered a improvement to the land and therefore subject to taxation. I hate to use this comparison, but it's, I feel, a good one. If you are to put a flagpole on your property and you put that flagpole in concrete and it's affixed to your land, we also have to include that in the assessment. It is also subject to taxation. So there's very few items or improvements that you do to your property that are not subject to taxation. Solar is one of them. That one is not taxable. However, we do have to have it on the assessment roll. You just aren't charged tax on that improvement. So unfortunately, when we're looking at that, if there is a septic tank, if there's a well, fencing, swimming pool, if you have an in-ground hot tub, all sorts of things, there's a cost and we have to add that to the assessment roll and it's subject to taxation. And it is included in your packet, NRS 361.077, Section 3A, specifically states public sewage system, or air conditioners, septic tanks, or other facilities to human waste, nor any property installed, constructed, and used is not included in that exemption. So unfortunately, we have to tax them.
Years ago, there was a couple that they had two properties on Medical Parkway, and they got the zoning changed from residential to commercial so they could sell it for $1 million instead of 400,000. And they had a septic tank on their other lot that was connected. And so rather than spend the money to take that septic out, they were here for 4 or 5 hours, and they did appeal it, but it sometimes it doesn't make sense. But and emotions get involved in this, and taxation is very emotional. So, with enough about me, Garrett, Garrett, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to deny the change of value for case number, I just had it up, it's 2026-0000027.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have?
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment, please?
Yes, I was going to ask
With
for
regard
comments.
to the new construction versus leaving the value the same, can you address that in your motion as well, whether we're to leave the value as currently is or to add that new construction that was found during the site visit?
And the other corrections to the square footages that decrease the value a little bit, but then there's a little bit of new value. That's the difference in the proposed motion and the values that are in the body of the discussion.
I will do better reading this time.
Garrett's going to amend his motion.
I amend my motion, and I move to maintain the Assessor's Office 2026-2027 fiscal year valuation of the subject property, apart from the changes to correct the value associated with the size errors and to assess the property escaping taxation, APN number 010-263-04, resulting in an improvement value of $705,767, taxable land value with no change of $170,000, for a total taxable value of $875,767,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Do we have any conversation, any comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Keith, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, guys.
The State
Beautiful
Board-
house, gorgeous house.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
State Board of Equalization is May 5th or March
Yeah.
5th for the
Yeah.
appeal.
I put these folks through a little bit of work, and so I thought I ought to come and just say hi.
Thank
I
you.
didn't bring donuts or sandwiches. I appreciate all the work that they're doing, and I get it, but thought it was worth a try.
having been an owner builder myself, you have my condolences.
Depreciation's gonna help you at some point. It'll take a little while, but it's gonna help you.
I can't even, I don't even qualify, I do qualify for a historic tax deferment, but it does nothing for me because of all the depreciation, because I think the money pit's so old. But, well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Keith.
Okay, now on to item 7. Is there any public comment? I guess Denny didn't decide to come this year.
Yeah.
Denny French. He's been missing, I think, for a while, hasn't he?
He was at the, yeah, he was at the board retreat on Friday.
Okay, well, good.
So, yeah, yeah,
He's still keeping up the fight.
yes.
I'd like to make some public comment. I just thank you, everybody at the assessor's office, the district attorney's office, everybody that puts time into it. I know some of this is your job, but I know how much work it takes, and you got off light this year, and not as light as last year, but some years are just absolutely grueling. But I know that they had to put those glass things up in the offices because people get very emotionally attached to taxes, And so, I really appreciate your efforts, and it's not an easy job by any stretch. And then when you get to hear it, I think that was the biggest public comment we had on an item here at the Board of Equalization. So thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you again for the growing pains this year. Hopefully we can streamline it even further next year. And if there's anything that we can do better, I sound like a broken record, just let us know. Let us know how we
I
can
really
help you.
liked the system when I accessed it from my own computer at home. It was
Fantastic.
I like it a lot better than having all the paper. I really
Fantastic. That's good
Yeah.
to hear. Good to hear.
And for growing pains with this, it's been pretty minimal. I mean, in 2008, when we had 4 binders that were this high,
Yeah.
going through all the stuff, and we didn't have any quarrels in here, verbal altercations in here. So anyway, thanks everybody for coming. Hopefully we see you next year. I don't know if I can do year 19, but who knows? So item number 8 for possible action to adjourn. Do I have a motion? So moved.
Make a motion to adjourn.
And there's a motion, second,
Second.
and we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, seeing none. Thanks for coming.